Hello and welcome to Indy Talks, the monthly interview show brought to you by the Hudson Independent, the most trusted source of local news in the river towns. We have a first today for the show. We're going to have a conversation that will take on certain elements of a debate. I hope you know, on November 5th we have an election, and for the first time in about a decade, Paul Feiner, the incumbent town supervisor, has a challenger on my left, Lucas Cioffi. And we've gotten the two of them here together to talk about the issues and why one wants to stay and one wants to succeed in the job. Paul Feiner, to my right here, of course, has been in office for 28 years. This is the first challenger in a decade, I believe you've had, so that indicates that the voters seem to think you're doing something right. But there are certainly issues that face the town and the villages in it. If you haven't seen Paul Feiner at the supermarket or a farmer's market or any one of the number of local events, then you haven't been getting out enough. Lucas Cioffi is a native of Edgemont who spent some time living in Hastings and is now back in Edgemont. He's a West Point graduate, an Army Ranger who is also a combat veteran. He's going to be 40 years old in a week or two. He is running for the first time for political office. I'll start with you, Lucas, if I could. You mentioned in the beginning of your 8-page position paper that you have an elevator pitch, which, as we all know, is a technique where if you're locked in an elevator with somebody you want to sell something to, you've got that much time between floors 1 and 30 to make your pitch and get out. So perhaps it would help if you made your pitch as to why you want to succeed Paul Feiner as town supervisor.
Barrett, thank you for this opportunity, Paul. It's great to be on stage with you. I've enjoyed this campaign, learning about our town and challenging each other to be better and to find the best policies for our town going forward. So I'm quite excited about this election. I originally jumped into this election to learn more about our town government because I have a theory that if we work more in the open, we can be more efficient, we can save money, and we can be more fair and represent the people's interests better by putting everything on the table. So I worked on open government in Washington, D.C. from 2009 through 2011. And the Obama administration at the time issued the Open Government Initiative, which had a core on transparency and public participation. And those are the two cores of this campaign. It's a 1-2 punch. For any problem we face, I believe that if we provide much more information and raw data to the public prior to deliberations, then the public, with all their expertise, and we have brilliant people here in Greenburgh, they're going to be able to inform our decisions better. But in order to do that, we have to give them more voice. So it's important to give them an opportunity to participate in the decision-making process upstream, far before all the decisions are made. And the town is doing a decent job at times on some issues. But I think that there's yet another level we can get to. And Mr. Feiner, like myself, when he started running for this office, went for an open government platform. So we're coming from the same angle. But now in 2019, seeing what the Obama administration has done, there's so much more we can do in Greenburgh. And so I want to bring that into this general election, and I want to demonstrate that it's possible and that we can do many of the good things that you're already doing, but also avoid some of the mistakes that perhaps were unintentional and that you're quite busy. And I just say that it's important to get more help from the people and embrace them in a partnership, and we will be more effective and powerful as a government in delivering exceptional services.
Great, thank you. Paul, I'll let you respond to the individual points that Lucas has made, but beforehand, just to open things up, since you've been in office so long, what would you cite as let's say, the 3 top achievements that you've made over the past 28 years in office?
Well, we've accomplished an awful lot just in the past, 2 years. We had a AAA bond rating. We've stayed under the tax cap every year. We got the MTA to agree to put elevators at the train station. We went from 200 acres of open space to 600 acres. We're going to be starting a food scrap recycling program. we started this past year, but now we're going to be doing curbside pickup and doing it for the villages. We just got a $250,000 grant. We've been building a lot of new sidewalks, gotten a few $1 million in grants for sidewalk and crosswalk safety, which I'm really proud of. We've enhanced recreation in the cricket field. We just started the first one in the community. We're dealing with major infrastructure. We're connecting the Rumbrook water tank to the Knollwood water tank. And this is in the last 2 years. In response to Lucas's point about open government and participation, we have land use advisory committees. So when a developer proposes a development, we invite people who live closest to the development to help us select the consultant who will review the application, and we involve the immediate neighbors in the process, even outside of the normal seeker process. So we had one in Edgemont, on Fort Hill Road, Ardsley Road, East Irvington. There was a concern about a solar farm. We had a land use advisory committee on that. We're doing similar things on West Hartsdale Avenue at Elmwood. And I feel we really involve the community. I spent almost like every day, emailing people with alerts, telling people what's going on. And I make it my business to do as much outreach as possible because I welcome criticisms. I welcome constructive, suggestions from the community, and I feel I will always learn from those who not only support me, but those who are critical.
Okay, you partially answered this question, but the sort of follow-up to the first one was, what 2 or 3 things do you want to achieve in the next term, assuming you're reelected?
Well, I have like an awful lot of goals. I even wrote it down.
This is an elevator speech. Remember.
This is right. My major goal is I'd like to probably do more sidewalks. We want to preserve the Odell House and make it a museum. I'd like to use technology, better. Because for example, we bought a one-arm bandit, a sanitation truck that picks up garbage with an electronic hand. Instead of having 3 employees, it's 1, and we went from 48 employees down to 40 employees. We're now have recycling every week for paper and commingles, not only every other week. So we've added services at the same time. We've reduced staff. I want to do more internal reviews of every department because I feel that just because we've been operating the town one way doesn't mean we should always operate it that way. We're going to be doing a work order system for each of the departments in the town, where if somebody is complaining about potholes, for example, it will be on a computer. Now that costs money, and I know Lucas has talked about this. We've been talking about it for about 2 years, and we hired a company, Woodard and Curran, to do an internal review. This was one of their recommendations, so we're going to implement it. Next year I'm putting it in, in the capital budget. There's a lot of safety improvements. The 9A bypass, they've been talking about that for 50 years, and the state now has appropriated $2 million for a study that could alleviate, traffic on that. There's just so many things that really have to be done, and what I'm really excited about is, the town, we never stand still. So this year, the past 2 years, we spent a lot of time on sidewalks. There's always new innovations, and we really want to run better, and we're always reinventing ourselves.
Lucas, can you think of 2 or 3 things that the Feiner administration has done that you would have done differently, and how so?
Thanks for the question, Barrett. So Mr. Feiner has mentioned, let's say, sidewalks, and he and I completely agree on the need for more sidewalks, safer pedestrian passageways, but I think the way that we would go about it would be significantly different. The first thing I believe is important is to get an inventory of all the roads that we have, and to say, from the town's perspective, these are the roads that are the priority for getting sidewalks. And then at that point, invite citizen participation to say, are we missing anything? People know what streets they want sidewalks on, but they don't yet know where it is on the order of priorities. So that's the idea of being very open with the planning and inviting their input prior to making the decision, prior to putting it in the capital budget. It's great that sidewalks go in the capital budget. What I'm saying, it's important to empower the public with the information about when their sidewalk that's most important to them is going to be fixed. Because that'll also reduce calls to the town to say, when's my sidewalk going to be fixed? Just pushing all that information can be very important. And then Mr. Feiner brought up the work that the town is doing with Fort Hill-Ardsley Road intersection, which I think it's great. The town is working to collect public input, but the way that they did it, and they hired this consultant who did not actually respect the public's opinion enough that at the end of the meeting, he wanted to collect all of their suggestions. He had the opportunity to do that. Now, Mr. Carosi was doing that, our commissioner, but it was not put up on the board so the public couldn't see that all their suggestions were being listened to. So I think that we need to hire different consultants that really embrace public participation. I was really shocked when I attended that meeting just a few weeks ago to see that this person didn't even want to write down at the end of the meeting just to let people know, this is what I heard from you of all the great suggestions for how to keep people safe. And that is important because people were quite frustrated at that meeting. It's good that the town started taking action immediately after, but the whole tone of the meeting could have been better if the consultant that the town hired really respected the public's input and really wanted to encourage them to give their ideas and record them so that the next meeting doesn't start off from square one again.
With only, can I just?
Yes.
The only issue, I have is, I feel that the consultant's job is to come up with professional, recommendations. It's the town board's job to, as policymakers, to listen. And I listened to, the community. We hired a crossing guard. So that's one safety initiative that, people, recommended. I've been in touch with the police department since then. We're looking at other less aggressive mitigation measures and just a traffic light. So I think we're really trying hard to be, responsive to the community. But when it comes to public safety, if there's many, many accidents, we have to do something. We can't just look the other way. And we're determined to make that intersection safer, because I think they mentioned that in the past couple of years, there's been 50 accidents. Even one accident is too much. And again, to me, crosswalk safety, pedestrian safety, I think that's really one of the major quality of life concerns in our community.
And Barrett, here, Mr. Feiner and I are completely on the same page about the end result. But I think that if we hire consultants who it's in their DNA to engage the public, the whole format of how they set up the meeting was just one man standing at the front, and everybody was sitting in an auditorium style. So it was a very adversarial meeting. Just the way we arranged the chairs, it sets the tone. And I'm not blaming the town board for that, but next time we hire somebody, we need to hire somebody different that has those skills. I come from a long history of public engagement. I was on the board of the National Coalition for Dialogue and Deliberation, with about 2,000 experts across the nation that work on public engagement. So I know this is possible. I'm not blaming the town board for any mistakes there. I'm saying that now it's on our radar. We should hire people who have those skills so that people don't walk out of that meeting as frustrated. And it's great the town's taking action based on what people said, but the experience was frustrating for many people. And I think we can do better, and I know that you want to do better. So,
and I would like to say, after the election, if you win, obviously, you're going to implement it, and if I win, then I would welcome your thoughts, because we could always be more transparent. We could be always more open. I would like to improve the tone of community meetings so people feel that they actually are being listened to. And if it takes moving chairs around and improving the way you interact with the community, that's something that I really would be very, very open to do, because really everybody has the same interest. Everybody wants to be safer, and everybody in the town wants the community, the people in the community to be safer. So, again, I feel these are constructive suggestions.
Okay. One of the issues that seems to be emerging in this thing is what I'd call management style. And Lucas, in your position paper, you have advocated for the town hiring the equivalent of a village administrator, a town administrator who would work with the town supervisor but take over the professional aspects, the nitty-gritty of the job. Can Greenburgh afford to do that?
So Professional management style is an excellent topic. So the difference between Mr. Feiner and myself is my nature. I'm a software developer. I'm an open government advocate. So I'm all about working in the open. The revolution that's gone on in our economy, the companies that are producing the most value are doing it on open source software. And the way that they work is they post software up for anyone, even people outside their company, to build upon and improve, to find the bugs before you push it to the live site. So that's the philosophy I bring into management. It's empowering the people at every level of management, the people who are on the ground, to identify where we can save money, push those suggestions up, and air them out. Because we don't want to make all the cost-saving measure discussions from the top. We want to make the decisions embracing the workers. And if we don't embrace the workers and we try to cut costs, those cost-saving measures will be rejected and will fail. So we need to embrace them from the very beginning. You brought up the idea of a town manager. So this is not my idea, but an idea that many people, of the thousands that I've talked to, are interested in because they see villages have an effective structure where there's a full-time village manager or village administrator, but we don't yet have that at the town level. We have someone who, whomever the supervisor is, has to run for office continually because it's such a small cycle. It's every 2 years you got to run. So Mr. Feiner always has to be issuing press releases. And he's very effective. He's stayed in office many years, and many people have a very high opinion of him. But also many people are frustrated with how fast the town or how slow the town implements certain things, such as some water projects. So if we had a professional that is not you or me, but instead is skilled in managing town business, they would be able to make sure that they would pay for all of their salary by just finding efficiencies in this $100 million budget.
You take pride in the fact that you are so accessible. People have your phone number, they have your email address. You're very quick in responding to people's comments when they are made and come to you with problems. Does that sometimes get in the way of your being able to actually do the job when you're spending so much time responding to individual?
Not really, because we're one of 1% of the communities in the country that have a AAA bond rating, and that AAA bond rating has resulted in approximately $100,000 a year savings for communities that don't have the AAA bond rating, who have the second rating. The state controller said we were one of the communities that was not, there was no fiscal stress. We've complied and stayed under the tax cap every year since the tax cap has been enacted, and many communities around the state, have not, done that. We always are looking for ways of managing the town better, so we do internal reviews of different departments, and we actually implement the recommendations. A number of years ago, there were problems in the courts. We hired a consultant, and we implemented all the recommendations. You don't hear anything about the court problems. If you look at technology, the fact that we're one of the first communities to embrace an automatic sanitation truck. Many of the other communities in Westchester, they haven't even considered that. So we're run more efficiently than most of the communities in the county. Even when you're looking at potholes, that's a basic issue. We purchased a machine just this past year that in the winter, it's a hot patch machine. So when the asphalt plants are closed, these machines basically could permanently fix the potholes. Practically nobody has that. Some of the villages are renting the machine. We own the machine. So I really feel that I have as much expertise as most village managers. In fact, I feel I'm a professional manager because I spend day, night, weekends, holidays, getting back to people, thinking about the town. And, I feel that if we had a town manager, the town supervisor would probably not be a full-time, position. And I feel that it would be more of a 9 to 5 kind of day. In Greenberg, if people have a problem, they expect answers at midnight.
So, Lucas, what's the advantage of having a town manager?
Well, in the platform, I'm not advocating that we have a town manager, but I am advocating that we create a citizen panel to look at how can we fundamentally improve the structure of our government. Maybe there's different ways to do representation at the town board level. Maybe we should have a town manager. This needs to definitely be considered. It can't be me coming in and saying, this is what we need to do. It's we need to really discuss it, and after a year of being in office, we'll have so much more information about what a town manager can and cannot do. And then we'll see what the citizens want. It's not going to be something that I impose. Okay. When we talk about the AAA bond rating, so if we can dig into that
I was going to segue into something else, but that's a good way to do it, through the AAA bond rating.
So the AAA bond rating, the town has managed its money well, but even in Mr. Feiner's press release, when Moody assigns us the AAA bond rating, they give a lot of that credit to our taxpayers because they are affluent and they pay their bills, and so that's where the AAA bond rating comes from. The town deserves some credit, but really most of the credit comes to the taxpayers.
But they did say that we have strong fiscal management in many of their reports.
Right. Here's where I'd say we can do better. So in terms of operating more in the open, not doing any more backdoor deals with developers because they can bite us. It was $100,000 we save each year on the AAA bond rating, but we're paying $700,000 per year for one of the decisions that came out since the last general election. In 2012, it was a federal court case, and what this federal court found was the town attempted to extort from a church a payment in lieu of taxes. It ignored and then replaced the planning commissioner when he advocated on the church's behalf, and town staff intentionally destroyed relevant evidence. Supervisor Feiner, also a licensed attorney, testified that he did not refrain from destroying documents, even though he anticipated litigation in this matter as early as December 2001. I just issued a FOIL request, means a Freedom of Information Law request, for something fairly simple, and what I got back from the town left so many documents out. These were documents that I know were in emails because I've been sending these emails to the town, but when I asked for the FOIL request back, I didn't even get the emails that I had sent back. So there's a fundamental problem with our town being open. It really needs to change. And as I mentioned, Mr. Feiner is doing his best because he wants to stay in office and he likes to help people. I fundamentally believe Mr. Feiner likes to help people. But the best way to help people is to not be the person in the middle of every request from 90,000 people. If we have a problem with, say, Netflix, we don't email the CEO. And Netflix is quite efficient. So we need a similar system of getting service requests to the town so that the departments can start acting on them much more quickly, and then you can enjoy your vacations.
Well, can I just mention something about the Fortress Bible? Right,
I do want to give you a chance to respond to that.
Well,
yes.
First of all, that happened in 1997, so that's a long time ago, and the Fortress Bible was never built. Church was never built, and the reason the town board rejected that, and the reason I voted against it, was because of traffic. I had met with the police chief. He was discussing sight distance, problems. It's on that proposed church was supposed to be built on Dobbs Ferry Road and right near the spring. And he felt that it was dangerous, and I felt it was dangerous also. So that was the reason we rejected it. I felt we could have done a better job preparing for the litigation. I think the problem that we had was we had an insurance attorney preparing us, and there was basically no preparation for the depositions, and it was just a mess. But we learned from that. But again, I felt that, and the town board felt that it was a major safety issue, and even though the church did receive their permits as a result of the court order, they decided never to build. And they kept the money, but they basically never built.
Well, Barrett, if I may, two quick follow-ups and then turn it back over to Mr. Feiner. Yes, many of these actions happen around the turn of the century. However, this is the first general election since the Federal Appeals Court and the federal court issued their rulings. And we mentioned that the town board rejected it due to police and due to traffic reasons, but what the town board did was unconstitutional, and that's why it is the largest religious discrimination settlement in the history of the United States for any municipality. It's not just a traffic problem, it was unconstitutional, and this is the first general election since this came to light.
And we have approved churches all over the town. This was, so I don't feel that it was religious. discrimination. In fact, the lawyer representing Fortress Bible was representing another church that did get approval.
Mm-hmm. We don't have time to relitigate this case, so we're going to have to move on beyond that. An issue that I think is of primary importance, certainly to constituents in the river towns, is the property tax issue. They've gone up and up. The real estate people in town will tell you that housing prices are beginning to drop as a result of the tax burden. You have pointed out that the town's portion of the tax is only 17%, which is not very much.
And for the village, it's about 2%.
Yeah, it's about 2%, but it's a big issue, and the property owners themselves don't care which portion is where. They know that the total bill they're getting is astronomical. What would you do, and I'll ask the same question of you, what would you do to reform the way the school system is taxed, the way property taxes are raised and used, if you had the opportunity?
Well, the first thing is I'm going to be releasing the 2020 budget in a couple of weeks. I spoke to the controller today, and we will have a 0% increase for both A and B budget for 2020. That's due in large reasons because the county sales tax went up and the town is getting over $2.5 million. So that's why I'm convinced that we'll be able to keep to a 0% tax hike. But I think going forward, I meet with the village officials every week. Every month, and it's a Village Officials Association, and we're looking for ways of improved sharing. The fact that, for example, this food scrap recycling initiative, we got a $250,000 grant. This is going to be the first time the town is actually going to be in the villages picking up, anything. We're going to be picking up food scraps. I think that, I've come up with a lot of shared service ideas, and unfortunately, the town can't impose. And that's the problem. But I feel that at some point, if we all talk and we all feel that we're not imposing and we're all working together, maybe there could be more sharing. We used to have seven different assessors, the town and unincorporated. Now it's down to one. The town does it. So that was an example of shared services, and there's a lot of other opportunities. But again, I've suggested a lot. I want to give you time. So
yeah, you've got a couple of minutes left. But how would you address the property tax issue?
Well, I'll be very brief so we can get to any other question. So our campaign was the first one to commit to a 2-year freeze of the tax levy. And as recently as 7 days ago, when we were speaking with the Scarsdale Inquirer, Mr. Feiner said that he would not commit to that. So I'm not sure how much has changed in 7 days, but I'm glad to see where you landed, because that is the top concern that people want. And it's not just enough to freeze the tax levy. We have to completely open up the budgeting process. And you're taking steps towards that, but there is yet another level of citizen engagement where we lay out the budget in a much easier to read format. Yes, it's state mandated, but we can go above and beyond the minimum to really bring citizens and residents, high school students that are working on school projects, really bring them into the budgeting process. Let them propose solutions and let town employees propose solutions. That's how we can work in partnership with every stakeholder.
Right. So you've mentioned shared services as something that you'd want to have. You've mentioned shared services. One of the problems, which I think you alluded to, is that you can't force these things. You can't get the Irvington and the Dobbs Ferry Police Department to merge because the policemen themselves aren't going to go along with that. So what do you do? What do you do to make this thing happen?
A couple of years ago, a number of years ago, in Dobbs Ferry, the Dobbs Ferry police chief suggested that they shared the Greenberg dispatcher between midnight and 6 a.m., and the mayor was almost run out of town. I thought that was a good idea because you could have had more police officers, on the streets. I had suggested we were looking at maybe combining courts.
Right. Okay, I'm going to cut you off to give Lucas one last shot at this thing because we're about to wind up.
The reason the villages don't trust us, there's plenty of reasons. We need to be much more open to earn their trust, and then we can start sharing services. It has to come from them, and it will only come from them when they trust us more.
Okay, gentlemen, thank you very much. This has been very informative, and I hope we have, between now and Election Day, and people get the chance to look at this.
Thank you.
So thanks for
Nice
coming.
seeing you. Thanks.